The whales are here.
These little species, they're little monsters, you guys.
I always remember you always had our back.
Can be confrontational. He's a straight shooter, so he's not afraid of kind of telling it like it is. The challenger, yes, that's
I saw two UFOs in the tubs.
All right, we're back again. And our illustrious leader, Terry Kim, is in the love seat today. So happy to be with you guys again. And we've been doing these deep dives, exploring the Enneagram, the personality test that we've shared with some people. And some people actually were inspired to take the test themselves or retake it. And that was part of our intention with this was we had taken this several years ago and to retake it again recently to see if there was any change and do more of a deep dive and explore and have conversations about it and how it has and how we can use it as a tool to further our conversations and interactions with our patients, our clients, our colleagues, and our personal relationships. Today, Terry is in the love seat, and based on Terry's Enneagram, he is the personality type number 8, the challenger.
Harry the
And
No,
challenger.
I'm not. I'm not a challenger.
we've always as long as we've known each other, we've always joked with Terry about being the challenger, but in a good way where he's always been very passionate and steadfast in his beliefs, and that's always been something everyone's really been drawn to. Other types that Terry has tested for is type 1, the reformer, and then third highest is type 2, the helper, which was actually my top Enneagram the last time. So we'll start off with the challenger.
Yes, Harry the challenger. I think it's funny that we I was trying to kind of remember that story back because um I think the first time I was introduced to Enneagram was back at Esalen maybe 10 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, Terry, but we were sitting on the deck outside the lodge, yeah, trying to figure out different people's personality types. And when it got to Terry, and then I was like, wait, the challenger, yes, that's that fits. And it's not something that came to mind. I guess I was kind of surprised by it. You know, Terry usually he's pretty, calm and I just didn't think of him as like the energy of a challenging person. But then once I kind of thought about it more, there were certain scenarios where I saw, oh yeah, he's assertive and can be confrontational to bring awareness to certain things, and he's a straight shooter, so he's not afraid of kind of telling it like it is. Yeah, so it was interesting to see that was kind of where he fit in. And do you remember that, Terry?
I remember exactly where I was sitting across from you,
Okay.
and I remember the expression on your face. Like it's like the face you have right there, like, yeah, you're a challenger. And I was like, I don't think I've heard that before. And
Yeah,
so
no,
I was
it just kind of came to me. I wasn't expecting. It was kind of a surprise to me and to you as well. But then once we had, I was like, not in a bad way. And sometimes you think of the challenger in a negative sense, but there's also many positive aspects to it. Uh, and so that's kind of more what I saw in Terry. But it was interesting.
it was fascinating. I That was kind of my beginning of studying Enneagram was actually through that prompt
Mhm.
and wanting to understand what that really meant. Because of course, when I think of challenging, I think of it as kind of more of a negative. And in that personality type, there definitely are moments where I do devolve into the lower spaces, and I totally recognize that. Where I can get blunt and unfeeling and uncaring at times, and sometimes pretty defiant and a little bit contemptuous. But my intentions have always been about, the focus on what's at hand. And when I see things that are right, my belief of what I believe right is, and I'm focusing on that, then I don't let it go. And I think that's where the defiance and sometimes the lower aspect of the energy of a challenger can kind of rise up in me. Less so, significantly less so today, but
Now, I'm curious, do you see any aspects of that, like as a child growing up, or what do you think might have contributed to?
yeah, that's an interesting question because that's been also an exploration of mine for many years. And I would ask my brothers and my sister about how I was as a child. And the general tone has always been, you're very docile. You went along with things, you got along. You never cried, you never yelled or was, you never created a mayhem around anybody. Calm, and so we never had to worry about you. I didn't raise a stink, basically. But there was a shift that happened to me in high school. There was a couple of moments in, when I was 9 or 10, but also in high school when I blew my knee out in basketball. And I did miss a season of play. And just something was occurring where I wasn't being tended to or taken care of in the way I thought, or I wasn't being seen, and that kind of started to develop this sense of anger. Feeds into this notion about being bad-tempered, or I'm not a rageful person. I am confrontational at times. There's no doubt about that. I can be forceful, but see, for me, I know some of the forcefulness comes from being not having my needs met. I was a sophomore playing varsity. In my sophomore year, I was actually supposed to be playing softball with my class, playing the seniors, and I decided to practice with the varsity team. And I was just bringing the ball up the court, and I went to just do a little jump stop at the top of the key, and I faked one way, and I went the other way, and my knee just twisted, and it went, and I passed out. And then next thing I know is I'm on my left side with my knee bent, and I'm trying to scream out of my mouth, but I couldn't get any vocalization out. My mouth was wide open. All my teammates were around me, and they were all going, "Oh, you broke your leg! You broke your leg! It's sticking out! It's sticking out!" And so I reached down to the side of my thigh and go down to my knee, and I could feel this, this big old hump. My tibia was laterally displaced, writhing in pain, and then I jerked and I relocated. And it was this big thunk. The coach never came to take care of me, not once. He just said, take him off the court, get him off the court. That was all they said. That moment stuck in me. And I actually challenged him in my senior year. I actually had a talk with him. And it was the first time I actually stood up for myself and asking for I didn't have a need that was met. And I was thinking, if I'm a coach, the first person that would be there would be me. And actually, my frost soft coach was quite like that. So the varsity coach was very different. So I think that's kind of a little bit of the origin of that, to answer your question.
How is that manifested into your professional life?
It gives me more empathy, that's for sure. And I think I'm ultra sensitive to making sure people's needs are being met. Number two. And I think in the beginning of my career, I probably overdid it a little bit. I think there was this wanting to kind of like be effusive and to try to figure out all the ways possible to try to help people, going way out of your way. Like, here's an example of that. Is there was a man very early on in my career, and I actually, because he didn't have the capacity to get a cane, and he needed a longer one, so just because of his posture and everything. And so I actually went to Home Depot and I whittled away, and I got his hand where his hand position would be to hold, and I just made it myself. And I put a little, rubber cup on the bottom of it, so he can put it down. And I remember his wife took a picture of him and sent it to me in the mail back then. It wasn't through a phone, and of him standing and walking out in the park one day. He's a Chinese guy, and so he looked like kind of like like a Chinese sage walking with his big stick, and it was really sweet. So, those kinds of things. And I think that still I have that in I think a more healthful way though. Yeah, the helping side. That's the helping side of me, for sure.
It's not surprising reading the report. It definitely mentions how number eights, the challengers will actually stand up for other people that when they see a wrong being done. And I know with us, you've always went to bat for us and the physical therapy team. And whenever you saw something that didn't jive with you, I always remember you always had our back. And even with personal things, you would always make it known that that's if something wasn't right, if injustice was being done, you would always be there. And it was always something that I know I've always appreciated. Sometimes I would, as a helper, I think I would not be used to someone standing up for me like that, and it would be like, wow, someone's standing up for me, or you know, and it was nice to have that feeling of someone being an advocate.
Like when I was about 9, I was bullied by 3 big guys, and I was coming from the library, and I was carrying, like a stack of books. In those days, you didn't have a backpack, so you had to carry everything or tie it in your jacket, to carry it. And they confronted me as I was walking home, and they knocked me down. They stepped on my glasses. They took my jacket and threw it over the backyard of another house. They threw my books all over. They spit on me, and they called me a bunch of racial names. And it was literally like a tornado went through me, and I had no idea that I was different than anybody else until that day. Honestly, I had no clue that there was a difference between me and anybody else. It was just, and so I always call myself kind of the reluctant warrior, because I got into martial arts for that reason, to protect myself. And I remember my sensei, with the first school dojo I ever went to, he asked me why I was there. And I said, because I want to beat up the bullies. And he looked at me and says, "Well, we don't use karate to beat bullies up." I'm thinking, "Well, what am I doing here then?" That's how kind of, I was upset. So that's another point of reflection around when my docility turned into contempt and self-righteousness. I'm very much a pacifist, and though I study and have my whole life, and but that's informed me in a way that helped me to heal a lot. I'm healing those elements of my old life, and to use martial arts as more of a philosophy in life. And that's where the challenging part, and maybe my reforming aspect of myself, but also looking at the potential reformation of my patients or clients and the people I work with. We're all hurting. We've all had to deal with some level of taking our sense of self away, and that deeply impressions us, that sometimes we don't often see, but I see it in person, in terms of how they move, of course, how we observe them in movement and their posture and how they speak, their tone of voice, and being more astute in how pain presents itself, and then which might be the overlay of the actual relationship to pain, which is what we learn over time. It's very subjective, very historical, and with its own set of logic and reason in one's own life. But there are the patterns that are there. And I think that's why, as we're talking about trauma, we're just looking at patterns. And like we look at the C5-6 disc, it's a pattern. We get to see where it goes. And, we know how people's heads move, and we know other ways to manifest healing in it. And it's the same thing for, the energetic of emotions in our body and how we hold it too. So, and that's part of the big work that we did at Esalen. Yeah.
I think what I noticed kind of reading over the type 8 was how it often just comes back to, you're a challenger, but you're challenging others to bring out the best in themselves, or to bring out their strengths. And I mean, having you as a leader for 12 years, and then as a friend, always, I feel like you're always empowering people to be their best and see things that maybe they don't see in themselves. And there's very inspiring. I think again, your were pushing me to go have that experience at Esalen, even though I mean, I think I wasn't sure of it for myself, but I think you were sure of it for me, and that made me willing to step out of my comfort zone in some ways and go experience that. And I think again, you kind of challenged me to that. You had the insight that that was a place where I could grow. And I often wonder, like, if I didn't ever have that experience, where would I be now? Because it's been so influential in my life and kind of the direction that I've taken in my practice and in my personal life. Yeah, so you've been that person, again, challenging in a positive way, challenging people to stretch and grow and step out of their comfort zone in different aspects of their life.
I'd have to agree. Definitely, like Kristen said, we would have that idea and we would have trepidation and just we would share it with each other. And I know, Terry, you would always step up and really be a great cheerleader and challenge our own beliefs. Why are you not? And what's holding you back? And it was always nice to get that perspective. I could see, like, reading the report, how some people might not be ready for that truth. And even with probably the patients you've worked with, they're not ready to hear the truth that's holding them back, that might be prolonging that chronic pain. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you have shared a little bit about when you were first starting out as a clinician and your engagement with your patients, and to now having left the organization, how has anything morphed or evolved with that? You had mentioned you're doing a lot of inner work. What would be the advice or the reflection you would share with other challenges, other number eights?
I think it's come up in our previous conversations with both of you and in the study of you two, is to listen. I mean, the true art and genuine and authentic nature of just this unconditional positive regard, for the other person. The storytelling for them, when they're allowed to be able to start to tell their story, and oftentimes they're hearing that story out loud for the first time. And there's so much beauty in watching the discovery occur as a clinician. And they metabolize it in a beautiful manner, and you just watch the body just begin to reorganize. It just goes into the self-organizing moment of healing, and you see their posture and their color, their skin change. You see their shen just kind of brighten up, and they're not now holding in the position that they were holding for months. It just changes. And there isn't anything I could do manually, as what I knew, that would ever have made that kind of change, and so deeply. And so it's really listening. And a large part of that listening is what I learned from Rachel Remen, this physician up in Marin who wrote Kitchen Table Wisdom, and another book about her grandfather's wisdom. And working with her, she said, Terry, you have to be in the 80-20%, which means 80% of attendance is on you in the beginning and 20% is on your patient. So what that means is you have to regulate all the things that you're saying to yourself in your little monkey mind as you're trying to listen to the patient. And as you get better at it, you'll be able to flip it. So you don't even have to worry about what's going on in your head anymore. And you can just be completely devoutly there for that individual. And that's presence. That's the deep-seated sense of presence. And she does that with you. Because when she's sitting with you, she's holding your hands, she's looking straight into your heart. I mean, and you can't look away. You can't, you know, you're trying to like get away from the tractor beams of her eyes, but it's just like you're sucked in and you're being seen. And so she was a beautiful example of that. You know, God bless her for, you know, her practice and her suffering that got her there too as well as a human being. And yeah, and so many other teachers, you know, that I've had experience with who taught me also not how to listen and not be authentic. So that's the other contrast of that is like, oh, I see how you're asking the questions as a teacher, but you're focusing on something else, and you're not actually capturing the essence. And you can even see it in the other person that they don't want to say anything to you because you're the teacher, and they just continue on with the charade, the play. And so I don't want to act, you know, I don't want to be an actor in front and not and be somebody different behind the veil, the curtain. And so it's always been my mantra is always be exactly who you are, no matter in what space you are in. You know, don't put on another mask when you go to a party or you go sit with your friends and this set of friends is different than that. Just be wholly who you are. And then you allow people to decide for themselves if it suits them to be in your energy space, you know. And quite honestly, as you guys know, my history of recent, it's just my whole table was cleaned. So during, you know, 2020 and all of that experience really was an accelerant to really sitting in my space of being myself authentically and really listening to my own inner voice too, and never allow myself to be othered or cast aside, particularly in people who had never even known who I am as a human being.
From reading The Challenger, it definitely speaks to what you just said about how you really value authenticity and and being true and not being one way or the other, and I guess not being two-faced, yeah, and just
Right.
really speaking from a place of I'm going to repeat, of truth, of authenticity, not just talking the talk, you know, walking the walk.
Eights grow by recognizing that the world is not a battleground to be approached as a gigantic test of wills. That my ego shell was built out of not being authentically myself. And it's where it begins. It's what I know about myself. And so that's when I begin to act differently than my true natured self. And when that happens, when I'm feeling like there's a pressure of not being allowed to be myself, then my ego shows up and wants to control the conversation or the narrative. And so my will, which is very strong in my belly, right? It's like the yi is powerful. And the confrontations that I would get into, whether they were, you know, in my relationship with Sabet or my kids or my siblings or, you know, I realized it was because in my old life that I was not being allowed to be heard and be seen, essentially. And that's where my will started to develop in a very strong manner to, you know, I need to tell people, you know, like I don't want to be a leader. That was my whole other thing I want to tell you all is like I'm not one who pines to be a leader at all. I actually want to be in the background and just like gently allow people to kind of like I just want to support you and you do your thing and then I can just watch it happen. And I get to go do my thing because then you guys got your thing going and it's everything's running smoothly. That's kind of what I like. And you know, being raised in positions where, you know, working at Kaiser and then finding myself sitting in positions of chairs or leading in these areas at the region. And then most recently with the union thing was a crazy, like, how did I get here? I don't even, like, I didn't ask for it. I don't want to be the spokesperson for 1,350 of us in Northern California. But there I
Like to
was.
take on a big challenge then.
I guess yeah, it's interesting. And I learned a whole bunch in being authentic and learning that even my authenticity, I think, was scary for some people. Is that right? Would you guys agree with that?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And it triggered people in ways where some ugly things happened. But
Yeah, I mean, I think if people don't know you and know that your heart's in the place of kind of uplifting everybody, and that's kind of where this challenge is coming from, they may take it differently, or that it's too much for them.
too much. Yeah. It's interesting.
Mhm.
You're also, uh, while the challenger is your primary Enneagram, it is interesting to read your second one, the reformer. I mean, there's a lot of overlap with
Mhm.
the two. Um, have you ever, I mean, from you reading your report, do you ever find the challenger and the reformer butting heads, even with the helper?
I mean, I've been told that I professorize. I have a very strong opinion, or I lecture, and because you guys know I go deep. Like when I research something,
Yeah.
I just research the shit out of it, and I until I'm satisfied. Mostly, I'm never completely satisfied with anything in my life. I'm not. Yeah, that a whole notion of being so impatient at times and critical, really mostly self-critical, because I
Mm.
don't want to be someone who doesn't know. That's my whole, like, I think that's
Mm.
my strength, but also my weakness. If we're to say those kind of words, it's really a both and for me. It's not either or. It's just I know that that can be my curse at times because I don't want to be stupid.
Mm.
It could be just the Asian myth and this notion that, just because I'm Asian, I'm supposed to be really good at math. And you guys, I suck at math. I'm no good at math. I'm great at doing addition and subtraction, but even that was a problem when I was in third grade subtraction. I think that's what did that to me was like subtraction. I got like bad score on that one in third grade by Miss Davis. She wrote this thing up about Terry needs to work on his carrying over, which I had no clue what even that meant. That was probably the beginning of my fractured mathematics intelligence. So my whole intelligence was at that time was in movement. So, being competitive at 4, athletically in structured organization at 4, like I just became my way of being. And so I have to move in order to learn. Yeah.
I mean, you're describing pretty much what, I mean, the challenger and the reformer are about. I think it's about always further trying to
Mhm.
better yourself. I do see the self-critical and the critical probably
Mm.
being at play.
Mm.
Um, but I think, as you've said, you've done a lot of your work around it,
Yeah.
and I mean, really, since you've left Kaiser, I mean, you're just always seeking even more knowledge. A lot of stuff that I think, man, I have to research that too because what? But I think that goes along with what part of just, again, like Kristen said, I mean, challenging as a way to inspire and to push everyone to be their higher selves, to their highest potential. And
Yeah.
some people aren't ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I have
Mhm.
impatience. Have had. I'm certainly much better at this, okay, because I've been working this stuff and really hard, and it's paid off. But I'm not 100% there. I don't think anybody ever could be really in the slide. It's always constancy in the work. So it's interesting to look at the adjectives,
Mhm.
and actually try them on, right? Just to try them on. Like the sarcasm, I grew up with a lot of sarcasm, particularly when you're in athletics, that you get a lot of that as a way of like exciting people to do better. They get really sarcastic. And I learned in my relationship with Sabette, especially because she has zero sarcasm in her bones. And she's a very literal person. And so I've learned to kind of like ease that off a lot, kind of soften that edge. And it's actually powerful because now I'm sensitive to it. I'm very
Mhm.
sensitive to sarcasm today. And I don't really like being around it too much.
Mm.
So, and judgment. That's the other thing is negative judgments about other people or other things. it does not suit me anymore. And so that's an aspect of why I think doing the personality inventory like this and actually talking to you guys about it is really supportive of and reflective of, wow, actually look at the work we do.
I think the thing that stood out for me is like accepting, principled, and wise. Again, you're doing your research.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have something to say and have an opinion and have good advice that you're sharing. And ultimately, well, I like this. It said felt personally obligated to improve themselves and their world. I think I see that, you know, just questioning the cultural norms and the status quo. And again, you know, questioning, why are we doing these things? What's the alternative?
Yeah.
And, yeah, ultimately it says improving environmental standards and make people aware of healthier lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
We've been in dialogue about that recently, and
yes.
and yeah, and I know you're working with other people on other clients on these aspects of their lives too. We need those people out there, you know, who are not just kind of going along with the corporate culture that we've been sucked into for so long.
Yeah, I enjoy it too. I don't, you know, I just think it's fun to do today. I like to see people begin to kind of flourish. You know, they begin to open their eyes up and they see things a little differently, and it's kind of their eyes widen, and they're accepting and they're interested and they get invigorated. And I think it's just the energy, right? It's just all energy. So why not put, you know, your best possible energy and nutrition into your body and keep your bio batteries alive and tanked up all the time, reducing all the inflammatory mechanisms that would have you otherwise be in all realms of your living your life. So yeah, I was going to ask you, you know, when you and I got together and we went shopping and everything and we cooked the meal, like how was it, you know?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I think since I had a little bit of a time crunch, that was the only thing that we're like, as a little overwhelmed, like, how am I going to get this all in? And I have this appointment I have to go to. I feel like if I had the afternoon free and we just could have, you know, then
to luxuriate.
Yeah, luxury. So that was, yeah, it is a lot for me to take in with that. I feel like I need something like concrete written down for me. So to remember, just to remember from the interaction is, you know, there's certain things I'm definitely like, when I go to the store, I'm just like, okay, here's the yogurt, here's the, here are the different, I remember the things that, how you explain things to me with the oils and the yogurt to get and those types of things. So I think certain pieces, you know, stick, and then it just needs to keep practicing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You do, Kristen, you do bring up an interesting fact. It's about, I guess it's with life, you know, how fast-paced it still is. And just Terry, when you came to visit, just to see you live what you preach. So I mean, you're being authentic and just seeing how you cooked and what you used. You're not just giving words to it, you're actually living it. And it does take time to live healthy and to be mindful. And I've definitely taken out vegetable oil just after reading the things you shared and then just reading about really that it should be used more to lubricate machinery, not to be put in us, you know, and little things like that, you know, but it does take time. And I totally hear Kristen just like, wow, I only have this much time and there's this that's convenient. I mean, that's the whole fast food mentality, right? And it's like it's easy, but then putting, you know, machine lubricant in me. And whereas if I took the time and paused to really respect myself, and that speaks to the challenger. I mean, really, it's just trying to live that authentic life, and but it's hard. It's challenging.
Yeah, it's challenging. I think in now having the awareness of these things too, I think I look at like how my kids are eating and, and even myself when we're gone this weekend and with a group of people and here's the appetizers are out and I'm looking at the ingredients of everything and I'm just like, it adds like another layer also. I'm like, oh gosh. And then if someone's making something that with oils or something that I'm trying to cut back on, then it adds like a layer of stress. And sometimes I eat it and then I feel bad about myself
Yes.
about eating it. Do the best that I can and not get too
Well, that comes to speaking about just self-respect, and I think that's part of like my whole mantra with my patients is, how much of you is respecting you? What are you really worth? And who else is going to give you that sense of worth but you? And so if you're really valued and to be healthy in your life, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you gotta, then the impetus would be to focus on that. And regardless of what anybody's ever going to think about your choices of either partaking or not, and that builds more self-respect for yourself because each repetition you do, and you start working away from that resistance of wanting to be a part, and so you don't look bad, you don't make them feel. It's not even you making them anything; it's actually you making yourself everything, and you're just responsible for what's right here. And they get to deal with whatever they want. And if you're taking good care of yourself, they'll take care of themselves in their own way, and you just move about your life. So, and I understand that process too, Kristen, because I've gone through that too. And today I don't have a problem with it at all. And then I choose, I go, oh, that looks really good. And I'm just going to bless it, change the molecular structure. And it's only 10% of my nutrition anyway. So, it's not a big deal. I'm okay with it.
I guess my question, I was curious, like when you look at the levels of development of your personality type 8, where do you kind of see yourself?
Let me just. In there as being a natural leader. And I've always tried to eschew that and just kind of focus on the whole group as leading the whole group and not to really take the seat of being quote unquote a leader. I said mentor because I'm mentoring actually a lot of people now. It's just that's my day is talking, texting, questions are being answered by me. I'm certainly less in the lower levels, and I'm aspiring to be the best as consistently as possible. So not just being courageous, but putting myself in a place where I know I'm good no matter what's coming my way. And I'm working on surrendering to the ego of myself that would have me think otherwise. Yeah.
This may achieve true heroism and historical greatness.
Whoa. Wow.
In the level 1 at their best. So
I don't think I wanted to see that. See, that's not the whole point. I want to be in the background.
Courageous, willing to put self in serious jeopardy to achieve their vision.
Wow. Yeah, right. Man, that's absolutely totally true. Yeah, to the point of near death.
Well, I think Ed and I are both grateful to have had you as a mentor and leader in our professional lives and still as collaborators and friends. Yeah, I think it's comes natural to you, whether you see it or not. It's again, you're inspiring and encouraging and empowering and all of those things. I look forward to every conversation. I gain something.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. You're always setting the bar high, but and after we've known you for a while, setting the bar, but in a more loving, compassionate way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm. Well, like we said in the last 2 incarnations, this is like better than paying for therapy. It's like if it was this way for everybody, you wouldn't have a therapist. You just have good friends and good brothers and good sisters to support you and see you. That's all we
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
you know?
Just willing to take the deep dive, you know.
Yeah. No, and I thank you guys for following me through that experience and me nudging you along. I'm grateful that you guys have had the experience. It's beautiful. It really is. It warms my heart, and just to know where we've come. I think in 1999 with Kristen, 1999, turn of the century, and just a few years after that was Ed. So
Yeah.
you guys entered into this life of us. I appreciate it.
25 25
Yeah.
plus years.
All right. Well, thank you both again. And thank you, Terry, for being open and willing to be in the love seat and share with vulnerability and courage and compassion. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
All right.
See you.
Well, until the next time.
All right, guys.
All right.
All right.
Blessings. Namaste, guys.
Blessings. Blessings.